righty. Welcome, everybody, to this brand new episode of Doug's Dugout. Is actually episode 1 for season 2. And we're welcoming back Doug Blunt. He is our baseball MLB expert for the season. Doug, welcome back.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back, Danny. It's been a long time.
I know. We've got some exciting episodes coming up this week, and we've got a big episode coming up next month for Apple WWDC. So you'll be back on a few times between now and then.
Maybe we might see the Apple Oculus Rift
Maybe.
on that episode.
Right?
Maybe so. That's what they're saying.
Yeah. So basically, today we're starting up Doug's Dugout for season 2. And Doug, tell me, what can we expect from baseball this season?
A few surprises this year. The Florida teams are doing much better this year.
Yeah.
I think they've cooled off a little bit, but I think they're playing good ball.
Yeah.
There's an ex-Cardinal that used to be the bench coach and a player that became managers of the Miami team.
Yeah.
He became over the season Skip Schumacher, and he seems to be doing okay. The Yankees aren't doing nothing. Boston's not expected to do really anything this year. The big surprise is my Cardinals. We're the worst team in baseball, but we can get into that a little later. And it's terrible. Houston, they're doing okay.
Well, I was a little surprised that Texas is doing much better than Houston.
Well, they spent a lot of money on the off season.
Yeah.
But the big acquisition, the guy that used to pitch for the Mets, Jacob DeGrom, he's been hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think he's on the DL now. So, they haven't got all their pitching in there, but no, they're doing quite well.
Yeah.
Tigers, Cardinals are playing Tigers on the screen back here. Tigers is, they're just Tigers. I mean, they're not that good at team.
Yeah.
But I believe that the Dodgers are just mediocre. There's really not been a team that's really taken charge in all of baseball.
Yeah. Now, are you planning to go up to St. Louis for any Redbird games this year?
We hope to. We hope to take the new bike, the new electric bike I got.
Yeah.
I got a bike rack for it now.
Yeah.
And so we may drive up there because I'm from that area and she is too. And I think she'd like to see her mother. And then over on the Illinois side, we'd like to go back to my hometown and drive around a little bit, maybe stay a night.
Yeah. Well, that would be kind of cool. That would be definitely kind of cool. Well,
we did that 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And I hadn't been back to Croninville in 20 years.
Yeah.
At least 20 years since Dad died. And and she'd never been there, and she loved the town. She loved Croninville.
Yeah.
And then recently in the wintertime, there's a group that comes down from Croninville that stays over South Padre Island.
Oh, wow.
And and so we had lunch with them on a Sunday afternoon over there at Blackbeard's. And that was great. I hadn't seen those people in 50 years.
Wow. Now, how big or how small is that town?
5,000.
Oh, wow.
5,200. Wow. Been like that for 100 years. 5,200.
That's like the size of Los Fresnos, something like that, I think.
Yeah, it's got a big courthouse in there. They call it the $1 Million Courthouse. It was built back in 1870.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like something from Washington, D.C.
Wow.
Because they were going to move the capital from Springfield down to Croninville, and there was a scandal involved, and it never got moved. They use it for the county now, but it's big. When I was a kid, I used to play Army on the place. It's huge.
Wow.
Big old dome. Yeah.
Wow. That's kind of neat. That's kind of neat.
You
All
know, it was
righty.
nice to see those people. I hadn't seen those people, like I said, in 50 years. You know, some
Really?
of them, one of them was my first girlfriend. I was like 15 years old. She was there with her husband, and some old coal miner buddies were there, and it was a good time. I can't wait till they get back here again.
Yeah, that would be kind of neat. Definitely, there's nothing like going back to your hometown. Of course, I'm already here, so you know.
Yeah, but you know, I've moved around a lot. You know,
Yeah,
between California. I was in California for a while, and in Wichita for a while, and Tulsa for a while, and Oklahoma City, and then Grand Rapids. You
yeah,
know, and then I ended up down here. I
yeah.
don't know how that happened, but it ended up down here.
You ended
And
up in paradise.
I thought I was getting a pretty good deal. It was a good deal when I first came down here.
Oh
But
well.
that's another story for the Naked City.
Oh well, yeah. All right,
Yeah, it
Doug.
was a lot different.
Well, let's go ahead and flip to your scoreboard here. Screen, give me a
Okay.
second. And it looks kind of the same from last year, but basically we've got the standings here. In the American League East, Tampa Bay appears to be on top with 27 wins and 7 losses. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good record. What do you think about them?
It's pretty neat because Tampa, both Tampa and Miami, they don't draw very well at all.
Yeah,
Okay, and they will, and they don't have both teams don't have much money.
yeah,
Okay, but what they did is they made some good trades and stuff. Okay, there's a book called The Extra 10% or something like that, that baseball guy wrote of how Tampa uses their small payroll in order to stay competitive.
hmm,
And they're in a tough division because they've got the Yankees in there, they got Boston in there, and they got Toronto in there. So that's a really tough division.
yeah,
But they made a few key trades. They got rid of a couple of years ago. They got rid of their high dollar guys. Guy that plays for the Yankees, Stanton. They trade him away to reduce their payroll. But
right,
then they made a few key trades with. Well, one was probably the best trade they made was with the Cardinals because they got a guy named Randy Aronazina,
hmm,
and he was the Cardinals. The Cardinals is they said, no, we don't need him anymore. So they traded him away, and then they turned around and God, they went to the playoffs, and he just come unglued in the playoffs, and he's one of the best players in baseball right now. And then
yeah,
they got this pitcher named Sandy Alcantara, and they got him from the Cardinals in the trade.
yeah,
Okay, and he won the Cy Young last year.
yeah,
So I mean, and they're building their team. They've done it within the system
right,
because
right,
they don't have the payroll.
right. And then the second one after that is Baltimore. They've got a 22 win and 12 loss record. What do you think about them?
Well, that's a James Cronston team, if you remember him
Yeah,
from the old days, right?
yep,
And him and I, we text back and forth. Baltimore for years, ever since the Ripkins, has not been a very good team.
yeah,
Last year, they almost made the playoffs last year, or did they make it? I don't think they made it, but they came close.
yeah,
And that's a tough division because you got the Yankees, you got Boston, and Toronto and that. And they're again a small payroll, and they're growing their team within their system.
yeah,
Okay, so they don't have that large payroll. Unfortunately, Baltimore is not drawn very well,
yeah.
and rumor is they may be moving very very soon, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Where are they
But
moving to?
there's been a couple teams, a couple places. One, of course, is Vegas,
Yeah,
and another one is Vegas, and then I think Mexico City is one of them.
really?
Okay,
Mexico City?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Oh, the baseball's big in Mexico,
Yeah, it
Mexico.
is. I mean,
And
I know that
yeah,
their little league team won or went to like some world thing a few years back. I can't remember something like that, but
and then I think they're thinking about North Carolina.
yeah,
I think maybe Charlotte, but that's not going to do well there because the Braves. That's not the Braves are not that far away,
right, right.
so it's going to be tough for them to move. But and then I think there's a rumor they may be moving to Montreal too. So,
Oh wow,
but
another Canadian
yeah,
team.
yeah. Well, the Expos were up there for a long time and they couldn't draw,
Yeah,
and so they moved. They moved the team down to Washington D.C. and they changed the name of the team.
right, right.
They're Capitals now.
Yeah,
So yeah, they had a stadium problem. Now they got Montreal. Yeah, Montreal. They had a stadium problem. They just wasn't drawing.
that's
You
right.
know.
They were the Expos, right? The Montreal
Yeah, the
Expos.
Expos. Yeah,
Yeah,
they
so
had
they
the good
became
teams.
the Washington Nationals. Yeah,
Nationals. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, Washington Nationals.
yeah,
And they're not drawn either, but
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I remember seeing a clip of their stadium in the House of Cards intro. You know, the old Kevin
Yeah,
Spacey episodes. You know,
yeah, yeah. Sure, love
yeah.
that show.
I did too. Yeah, but I didn't watch it because of Kevin Spacey though.
The last season. Well, he wasn't in the last season. That's when all that stuff happened.
I
But when
know.
he was, the first couple seasons, Kevin Spacey was really good.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. I used to like
Yeah,
when he used to go into the third person. You know, in the
yeah, yeah,
yeah, that was
yeah.
kind of cool. Well,
That was
you've
kind
got
of cool.
you
He's a good actor. I don't care. His other stuff that he's been involved in.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
30 years ago.
yeah.
Give me a break. You know, but he's been able to fight everybody back, so I guess he's okay.
Yeah, I guess so, you know.
But
Then
he's
of
pretty
course
much blacklisted.
you've got Toronto and Boston next, and then you've got the Yankees down at the bottom of that
Yeah.
division. Uh,
Yeah,
and the
Toronto's got a good team. They've
yeah,
got a really good team.
yeah,
And the Cardinals played them the first series of the year in St. Louis.
yeah,
And you could tell the difference between the two teams, between Toronto and St. Louis.
yeah,
Yeah, they've built it. It's taken them a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, but they've built a good team. And they just throw a few free agents in there just to get them over the hump because it's hard to compete with Boston and the Yankees on that payroll deal.
right, right, yeah, yeah, because
Yeah.
they've got bigger payrolls, right? The Yankees and Boston would have a bigger.
Oh yeah, Yankees. The top three teams are the Yankees, the Dodgers, and I think San Diego might be
Really,
as
the
far as payroll
Padres,
goes.
huh? Wow,
Oh, I think they spent almost $1 billion, maybe three-quarters of, yeah, because they signed all kinds of free agents.
wow, wow.
Yeah.
Well, then the next section is the American League Central, and I guess your daughter will be happy that her Minnesota Twins are on top.
Yeah, the weather hasn't been that good up there.
Yeah,
Um, the grandson's at a track meet today, but it's been, it's typical Minnesota weather. But there's so many indoor stadiums now that I think their schedule is geared, where there is an indoor stadium. Now
yeah.
the Twins don't have an indoor stadium.
Wow.
Okay, but yeah, the football team does, but the baseball team doesn't. It doesn't make sense. Nobody can figure that one out.
Yeah.
But no, they picked up they've got a couple of good guys on there. They got a guy that's one of the best players. His shortstop's one of the best players in baseball, and well, he used to play for the Astros. Their shortstop,
Yeah.
Carlos Correa. Yeah,
Yeah. 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 So
yeah,
he's with them now, huh?
yeah, and he's got a lot of years left. There
Yeah.
was a little controversy in the postseason around January or so. Is that he was a free agent, and he was going to sign with the Giants for a ton of money,
Wow.
11-year deal, and all that. And then they announced it and all that, and then he couldn't pass the physical.
Wow.
Well, then he says, "Well, I'll just go somewhere else." So I think he was going to go to Boston.
Yeah.
Same thing happened. Couldn't pass the physical,
Wow.
and then they were worried about his ankle or something. He had an injury a couple years ago, and I guess the physical revealed something. But then he went back to the Twins, and they offered him a good sized contract, so he's
Wow.
happy.
Wow. Well, you've
Yeah,
got before I represent Cleveland. I believe you mentioned last year they're known as the Cleveland Guardians now.
yeah, Woke City,
Well, they're
I'll
second.
still call them Indians. I'll
Yeah,
still call them Indians.
they're second in their division there.
Yeah, they're playing decent ball.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they're playing decent ball.
And surprisingly, Detroit is third. I think last season they were at the bottom of the barrel, weren't they?
Yeah, well, they were this year, but then they've got hot. As a matter of fact, I just heard on the game a while ago that their relief pitching is the best in the business. Is
Wow.
leading the league in both leagues. Yeah,
Wow.
and I agree with that because the Cardinals got beat Friday night, okay, and they got beat yesterday, and I think we're still winning. I think, but they seem to have some pretty good relief pitchers.
Wow.
They have no names. There's no names on that ball club that I recognize.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're again, they're just building within the system.
Yeah. Look at Kansas City in that division. They're at the
Well,
bottom of the barrel. That they've had 8
well,
wins
that's
and 20,
Kansas. That's Kansas City for you.
26 losses.
Yeah, they.
Wow.
I don't know. Kansas City had I think they had a good team about 5 years ago or so,
Yeah.
but they haven't done anything in a long time.
Yeah.
Um, they're wanting a new stadium too, but
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll get one or not. But they, low payroll. Their farm system pretty much dried up about 5 years ago when they went to the World Series, and they're going to be dead. They'll finish last this year.
Yeah.
I'm positive about that. Yeah.
Chicago's one notch about them. Chicago White Sox. They've got 11 wins and 23 losses.
Yeah. Disappointing team this year. Tim Anderson, one of the best players in baseball. There are some other ball players on there. Lance Lynn, former Cardinal pitcher that pitches for the White Sox. He's kind of got off to a bad start. But I think the White Sox will be back up there in that division. It'll probably end up with the Twins and the White Sox going back and forth.
Mm.
They get a chance of making a wild card.
Yeah. And then, of course, you've got the American League West, as we spoke about earlier. Texas is on top with 19 wins and 13 losses. That's kind of surprising from what they were last year.
They made it. They got that new ballpark there in Dallas, right?
Uh-huh.
I guess actually it's in Frisco, and $1 billion ballpark, and so the team decided that, hey, we got to pack them into that stadium. So they went out in the off season and picked up a bunch of free agents.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it seems it's paid off for them.
Yeah, and they've got some pitching they've developed inside the organization. And what they did is that on the off season, they went out and got a manager, okay, that's a pitching coach and all that kind of stuff. He's been in baseball forever.
Mm-hmm.
I forget the guy's name, but he's and he's a pretty good manager. He's a thinker. Yeah. So they picked him up. They got a pretty good deal. So
yeah,
I think the Rangers will be in it. I think at least for a wild card.
Yeah. And then you've got the Angels right behind them with 19 wins and 15 losses there.
Well, unquestionably, they got the two best ball players in baseball. Mm-hmm. They got, the Japanese ball player, Otani, mm-hmm. okay, that goes both ways. He can pitch and hit. Okay. And then you got the center fielder. Okay. And his name is, let me think now. It's on the tip of my tongue, but definitely the best player in baseball.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And their center fielder is, and I think they might have moved him over to right field. And, the third baseman, Rodon, used to play for the Nationals. He had a monster year when the Nationals won the World Series. And he was a free agent. The Angels signed him to a huge $285 million contract. Wow. And he's been hurt ever since. But this year he's not hurt, and he's doing pretty good. But Otani, and is definitely he can pitch. Look at the World Baseball Congress games, okay? And he pitched, of course, so he pitched for the Japanese, okay? And he's just fantastic. He can hit. He hits homers. He's a hell of a pitcher. He's only been in the league for a couple of years, and he's got over 500 strikeouts.
Wow.
So, yeah, and I think Babe Ruth used to be a pitcher, right, in the beginning of his career.
Right.
And he's surpassing all of Babe Ruth's years. Yeah. Wow. What Babe Ruth did back in 1915, 1916, all that. So he's for real. Wow. Yeah, he's for real. So he'd be okay.
Yeah. Well, also Houston, they're at third.
And the Angels have improved. The Angels have always had a pretty good hitting ball club. Albert was with the Angels for 10 years, right?
Right.
Okay. And I mean, his numbers went down, but he was still better than most baseball players.
Yeah.
Okay. And of course, so he's gone now, but they never had any pitching. Yeah. Well, they've developed their pitching, picked up a couple free agents, and the Cardinals played them last weekend, and they seem to be a much better ball club.
Yeah. And Houston's third in the league right now. They've had 17 wins and 16 losses.
Yeah, I mean, they're, it's a long year.
Yeah,
they'll be fine. McCormick got hurt. Matter of fact, he's on the injured reserve, but he's going to be playing. He's playing in Corpus Christi right now.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he's recovering from his injuries. So yeah, because every day I get an email. They got McCormick bobblehead tonight and all that kind of stuff. Right. Because we go to the Corpus Christi games all the time.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, last in that league, you've got Seattle and Oakland.
Well, Seattle has a good team. They just haven't unwind yet. Yeah. They've got this Hernandez guy is really something special. And they've got a couple other ball players. Cardinal Colton Wong is playing second base for him. Mm-hmm. So they've improved, and they'll be fine. Yeah. They're going to be near the top by the end of the year. Yeah. Oakland A's, what can you say about the Oakland A's? We've always said, they play in the Oakland Mausoleum there, so the Coliseum. Yeah. And they don't draw very well. The Coliseum is just literally falling down.
Yeah.
And the rumor is that they bought some land in Vegas, and they got to convince the Vegas people to build them a new stadium like they did the Raiders.
Right.
And matter of fact, MLB, they said, hey, listen, we can't have baseball in Oakland. You need to move somewhere else or build a new stadium.
Wow.
And Oakland doesn't have the tax base, even though they're in the Bay Area.
Right.
They're no San Francisco. Oakland's a lot different than San Francisco.
Yeah.
And, and the A's, once again, the A's is a poor baseball team. Yeah. And they get a bunch of ball players and young kids, and they do pretty good for a year. It takes them 2 or 3 years. Okay. And they play good for a year. They usually make the playoffs. And then when those guys become free agents, they lose them all.
Wow.
Or either that or they start trading them away.
Wow.
But historically, that's always been the A's.
Uh-huh.
Even when they had, you can go back in baseball history, like in 1914 or so, they had the what they called the $1 million infield,
Yeah.
and they were a really good team. Charlie, and not Charlie Finley, but the Connie Mack was the manager, and
Uh-huh.
he was a manager, but he was also the owner. So he was a manager for 50 years,
Wow.
because he wasn't going to fire himself, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And then he would build a team, and they'd be good for 4 or 5 years, and then he'd have to make payroll, and then he'd start selling players off. He
Wow.
did that like 2 or 3 times, and then
Wow.
when Charlie Finley turned, Connie Mack finally got too old, he died, and then Charlie Finley, they were in Kansas City then, and then Charlie Finley bought him, and he was tight with the money. That was the teams, the great Oakland teams with Reggie Jackson and Raleigh Fingers and Vida Blue, who, by the way, just died today.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and then same. It's the same story. They get some players, they make the playoffs, and then they trade them away
Wow.
because
Wow.
they can't make payroll.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, there's a movie called Moneyball.
Yeah.
Brad Pitt was in it, and that's the Oakland A's,
Wow.
where they use statistics to value
The players.
the players. Yeah,
Yeah. Wow.
yeah, yeah.
Well, on the National League East, Atlanta is ahead, 24 wins and 11 losses. What do you think about
No
Atlanta?
surprise there. No
Yeah.
surprise there. I think Atlanta may have the best team in baseball. They've got good young pitching. They've got young ball players on that team and overall class organization.
Yeah.
They're good.
Yeah.
They came in St. Louis and they just destroyed the Cardinals
Wow.
this
Wow.
year. Yeah, they just there's no comparison. But
Yeah.
yeah, Atlanta's got a good team.
Yeah. And then you've got the New York Mets behind them.
They're still working on it.
Yeah.
They're again, the Mets spent a lot of money, about $750 million, and they picked up a bunch of free agents, and the pitcher they picked up, probably one of the best in baseball. He's been hurt, and then they lost their, I think they lost their short. No, they lost their relief pitcher, their best reliever, their closer on the World Baseball Congress this year. They were playing a game. He was playing, I think he was pitching for Mexico, I think.
Yeah.
And they won the game. They got all excited, and he hurt himself in the celebration.
Wow.
I think he tore an Achilles or something.
Wow.
But he's out for the whole year.
Wow. Well, that's not good.
No. Pretty good manager.
Yeah.
They got, Buck Showalter's pretty good manager. He's been around in baseball forever. He's a lifer, and he'll get him on track eventually here.
And then the next three in the league, in the same league, are Miami, Philly, and Washington.
Yeah, well, Washington, there again, that team's in transition because the principal owner died. He's really old, like 95 years old or something, and he died, and now the family wants to sell the team, so they're up for sale.
Wow. Wow.
And so, they traded away, their big ball player was Juan Soto, and last year he was going to be a free agent. Well, usually what happens, the kid's going to be a free agent, they trade him away like a year before he's going to be a free agent, so they can get something for him.
Right.
So they traded him to San Diego, and they really don't, they've lost their pitcher. There's a pitcher that hasn't pitched for him in 2 years. They're paying him like $25 million a year. He's got all kinds of arm problems and stuff. And then, they traded what's his name off to Philadelphia a couple years ago because they didn't want to pay his salary.
Yeah.
And so, Washington's Washington.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds you back in the old days when the Senators played there.
Yeah.
Same situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because back in the day when the Negro leagues were around, the owner was a guy named Calvin Griffith, And the
Uh-huh.
Senators, they never did do anything. They was always left space. So what he was he was one of the owners that voted against integration. And the reason why he voted against integration back in 46, 47 time frame is because he made all his money, okay, leasing the ballpark out to the Negro Leagues.
Ah.
And he said, hey, I'm not prejudiced at all. I don't, he says, I've got a lot of, they called them back there colored ball players. Okay. And he says, well, I've got a lot of colored people or colored players, color in my front office.
Yeah.
And they would draw, back then, the black families, that was a cheap date.
Yeah.
You go to the baseball game, right?
Right.
And they had good teams. The Negro Leagues were good teams.
Right.
Okay. So he kept integration, as long as he could,
Right.
because he needed the money to operate the major league team.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's because, you had, Washington, D.C., a lot of black families, they had disposable income because they worked for the government there, right?
Right.
A lot of, a lot of blacks are in civil service,
Yeah.
especially back then.
Right.
Okay. And they would take their families to see the Negro Leagues play.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
A little bit of
Yeah.
history there. And
Yeah.
then, of course, you've got the National League Central. Pittsburgh's on top at 20 wins and
That
14 losses.
that is a surprise there. Pittsburgh is another team that they have a beautiful ballpark. Oh yeah, it's a PNC Park is beautiful, but they've never been able to draw very well because in Pittsburgh, high school football is very big.
Yeah.
Okay, and NFL with the Steelers, right?
Right.
But they've had some good teams. You go back to Roberto Clemente, and that's where Barry Bonds originally came from, and they've had some good teams over the year, but they haven't been able to keep up with all the other teams. And their front office has made some personnel mistakes, but they seem to got their act together. They picked up a lot of young talent. Okay. And one of the big deals is that, now it seems like Pittsburgh is following the Atlanta Braves process. Okay, they're getting a young ball player, and they put him in there, and he does pretty good, and then they sign him to a long-term contract. So they've signed like 2 or 3 ball players, no more than that, about 4 ball players. Brian Reynolds, I think, is the last one that was just done last week, and they've signed him a long-term contracts because usually in the past, Pittsburgh could never keep up with free agency. So right. the player become free agent, they'd move on. Or the Pirates would trade him before becoming a free agent.
Right.
They're not doing that now. They're not doing it now. So they're playing some good ball. I don't think Pittsburgh will be in it by the end of the year. I think they're gonna run out of gas, maybe by the All-Star break. But so far, hey, they're playing good.
Yeah. And of course, you've got Milwaukee second there with 18 wins and 15 losses.
Yeah, Milwaukee's a good franchise. They not big on free agency. Their outfielder, what's his name? Looks like Pete Davidson on SNL. They signed him to a huge contract when he went to most valuable player year that year.
Right.
And because he was a young ball player, Yelich, that's his name, Christian Yelich.
Right.
And he hasn't done much since then.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're stuck on his salary. I mean, he plays every day, but he's not hitting the home runs like he used to.
Right.
And they've got they've got a couple pitchers on there that are going to be free agents next year. Okay. And usually what they do is they get rid of them around the All-Star break so they can get something. Yeah. But we'll see what happens on that. Milwaukee will be in there. They got a good team.
And Chicago Cubs, they're third with 17 wins and 16 losses. Weren't they at the bottom last year?
Yeah, they looked really bad last year. They had no defense and all that. I haven't seen the Cubs this year, but they've made some inroads with some young ball players. The Cub farm system's never been very good.
Yeah.
Okay. You go back to the days with when Wrigley Gum owned them,
Yeah.
back in the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s.
Right.
And Charlie Wrigley never spent any money on the Cubs.
Yeah.
The son did. Now the old man did.
Yeah.
Okay, he spent a lot of money on the Cubs,
Right.
but but when he died, well, the youngster got in there, and around 1960, I think it was, and they haven't done anything since then.
Wow.
They did win the World Championship a couple of years ago, 5 years ago or so,
Yeah.
but their farm system's never been good.
Yeah.
Okay, but they're getting some talent on there now.
Yeah.
So yeah, they got a lot of work on their defense. See, the big deal was when they had that good team about 3 years ago. They traded away all their ball players. I mean, we're talking about good young ball players that could probably had at least 10, 15 year future with them. So Smarty that plays for Philadelphia. You got like Bassett, I think is his name, and then you had Javi Baez, and then good young ball players. But see, they're all coming up on free agency, so they got rid of all of them.
Yeah. And then, of course,
And
you've
so,
got Cincinnati and your Redbirds down at the bottom on that National Central.
yeah, I don't think Cincinnati's going to do too much. I think I picked them to be very in the last place.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Decent ballpark to play in. A lot of history with that organization, but not much talent. They've got there again, they had a couple of free agents, pretty good ball players, and they were young. They came up, traded them away because of free agency. They couldn't pay the salary.
Yeah.
And, last year, Joey Votto had a bad year. I don't know what he's doing this year, but he's like 37, 38. He's been in Cincinnati forever. He's out of his prime now. And they, a few, but they really don't have a very good organization.
Yeah.
Not like it was, not like it used to be.
Right. And then, of course, your Cardinals. What's going on there?
Well, I don't know what's going on with. Well, everybody asks me about what's going on with the Cardinals, Doug, and I tell them, well, in the beginning of the year, they wasn't getting a whole lot of hitting. Okay, the big guns, Goldschmidt and Arenado, okay, they were just doing okay, and then Arenado went on a slump after the first series, and he didn't. Yesterday he had a home run, but it was the first time he hit a home run since April the 12th.
Yeah.
Goldschmidt is, Goldschmidt hit a home run today too, but he's got 6 homers. Goldschmidt's Goldschmidt.
Yeah.
Steady as a rock. Most valuable player last year, right? He's steady as a rock. And then, they picked up Wilson Contreras, an ex-Cub, okay, on free agency. There again, the Cubs, they let him get away. And he's 3-time All-Star. Yeah. Contreras is hitting, okay. But then, Arenado is probably the best defensive third baseman baseball's ever seen, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But his hitting, he's always like a 300 hitter. He's always hitting 300, but this year he's hitting like 240. And he's been in a slump, and it's going to take him a while to get out of that slump. We're seeing signs of that now, but it's going to take a while. He's going to take him a while to get up there. And the rest of the team is basically the same from last year, okay? But one important ingredient, and that's Albert Pujols. Mm-hmm. I think Albert Pujols did more for that team, not so much with his bat. Okay, last summer, the second half, that'll never happen again in baseball history. But up to that point, even when he wasn't hitting the first half, he has added that much more in the dugout. Yeah. He was a leader, okay? And the young ball players would come to him. Yepes being this guy named Juan Yepes. I mean, you could always saw Juan Yepes and Albert talking to each other. They were on the iPad and they were drawing schemes. They're drawing diagrams and stuff on there, and Albert's just he's probably the best right-handed hitter that's ever played, and they needed him on there. And the Cardinal manager, Ali Marmol, Albert was 42 and Marmol was only 36.
Mm-hmm.
even now.
Right.
And he really didn't play the game that much, but he was always in like a bench coach or something.
Yeah.
And I think Albert and Yachty took charge of that team. Yachty didn't play that much last year. He had, but that's okay because he gave us 19 years. But Albert, that last year, he ran that clubhouse. All the hitters, went over to him. All the first, even Goldschmidt over, showed him how to play a little first base. I mean, he's just something special.
Right.
And this year, the relief pitching sucks. Okay. Our muscle man, Wainwright, he missed the first part of the season. He just got off the DL by lifting. He pulled a muscle or something in his groin, lifting weights. Can you imagine that?
Wow.
And he's not supposed to lift weights. He's 42 years old. He's a freaking pitcher.
Right.
And O'Neill hasn't been hitting. There's something wrong with that clubhouse right now. Either, they've lost 8 games in a row.
Right.
And that's got a lot to do with it. But there's something else wrong with that clubhouse. Marmo does not have control of that. They need a senior citizen come in there and just take charge.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
And Yachty, and Contreras. The big news is that we've got a 3-time All-Star catcher, Contreras, that we paid $87 million from free agency this year. Okay, he's hitting good, but he's having trouble handling the pitchers, because he's not used to them.
Right.
Okay. So now what they've done is they slid in third base Friday night and messed up his ankle, but he can still run and play. Okay. So then what they did is they turned around and, they said, okay, we're going to put him in DH and we're going to maybe play a little outfield and we'll bring up Kesner, which Kesner can't hit with a damn. He had a home run Friday night, but, he cannot hit. Okay. And then they brought a kid up from Memphis to help out. But they're just trying to keep Contreras in the lineup because he catches every day with a bad ankle. He's going to get hurt, and he's going to be out for a long time. Donovan's doing great. Donovan's having a great year.
Yeah.
And there's some players having a great league, but, Newt Barr, he's doing okay. But the relief pitcher is just terrible.
Yeah.
Just terrible.
Well,
so I think we're going to come out of it. I think we're going to come out of it. So.
Well, over on the National League West, you've got the Dodgers on top with 20 wins and 14 losses there.
Well, it's the Dodgers, one of the highest payrolls in baseball.
Yeah.
Mookie Betts can play anywhere.
Yeah.
And they've got the kid they got from Atlanta, first baseman. I forget his name. They just got a good team.
Yeah. And then you've got then you've got Arizona behind them.
Arizona has done a lot of good things. They've got some good talent. They're in about the second or third year.
Yeah.
All this talent they brought up from the minors, made a few trades, not too many. Don't really have any free agents they've signed.
Right.
But they got they got good potential.
Right. And then you've got the Padres third there.
I would say they might have a higher payroll than the Yankees this year. Wow. But they went out and got just a ton of ball players. Infielders, outfielders, pitchers. They're going. The ownership, they want to win, and they're going to spend all kinds of money to make that happen.
Right.
Okay? Yeah. And they got, pitchers. They got the Japanese ball player. They're another Cub that they traded away.
Yeah.
Okay. He's a good pitcher, and they're going for the gold this year.
Yeah.
And then if they don't win it this year, they're going to have a hard time because they've got some of those players are going to be free agents next year.
And then you've got San Francisco and Colorado at the bottom there.
Well, San Francisco, Cardinals played them in Frisco last week, and really no names at all. Yeah. I didn't hardly recognize any of those names on there. Yeah. But they got a pretty good manager. Well, Gabe Capel.
Yeah,
I think his name is. Yeah, and he seems to be a motivator. So they're San Francisco. They a couple years ago they won 110 games, but got knocked off in the playoffs. And since then they haven't been very good. They got old, and
Yeah.
so I think they're going to be in second division this year.
Yeah. And Colorado?
Colorado's Colorado. Like Cardinals played them in Colorado, um, and they really, you've got, there's a guy named, he looks like a wolf man, with the beard, long hair, Charlie Chapman,
Charlie Chap.
something. Yeah, Charlie something.
Yeah.
Been there for 100 years.
Yeah.
Good ball player. He's getting a little long in the tooth. He used to be a center fielder. Now he's a right fielder. And he's still a good ball player. But, and then they got a couple other guys on there. But, Colorado, it's hard to win in that where they're at.
Yeah.
Because they can't, if you're a pitcher, the worst nightmare you can have is go to Colorado because of the ballpark there, because it's mile high.
Yeah.
And the ball travels so well.
Yeah. Now they also play at Mile High also? Yeah.
Yeah, no, they got their own stadium.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
But they're in Denver, see, they're in Denver, and so is Mile High, right?
Yeah, that thin air can get to your brain and everywhere else.
Yeah, and let's say you're a ball player. Let's say you're a Colorado Rocky ball player, and you go on a road trip and you're gone for 2 weeks, and you come back, you got to get readjusted again.
Right. That oxygen deprivation,
Yeah, that's the reason why when all the ball players come into Colorado, they come from Arizona or somewhere else. They always lose the first game because they're not acclimated to the climate.
To the climate, yeah.
Colorado's never had, all good. Okay, you get traded or to the Colorado Rockies, you're going to be out of baseball because you just can't pitch in that ballpark.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the ball travels so well there.
Yeah. Well, like I said, when I was in Denver a few times, I'm surprised that I didn't have any problems breathing. That's high climate up there.
Yeah, I've never been there, except going through the airport. That's nothing, But Diva now she used to, she lived there. Yeah. Taylor was born in Denver. Okay.
Okay.
But once you get acclimated to it, it's okay. But
yeah,
that's tough.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. All righty, Doug. Well, that wraps up this week. Anything else you have for us? Anything you think we should look out for between now and next week?
I just want to say that, I mentioned a while ago that Vida Blue died today. He was in the glory 70s teams with Oakland A's.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And, Raleigh Fingers, Vida Blue, Reggie Jackson, Sal Bando, all those guys. He died, and excellent ball player. I mean, yeah. he was a tough pitcher, and really good and pretty good for the ball game for baseball too. Yeah. And he died. He was only 74.
Wow, okay. That's young.
Kind of scary.
That's young.
Yeah. That's my age. I'm going to be 70 in August. I go, holy shit. But I can remember Vida Blue pitching in the World Series. He was only like 18 or 19 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was young phenom. But he died. And of course, so something that's close to my heart is that last week we lost two Cardinals. Yeah. There was a Cardinal named Dick Rote, and he played shortstop for us in '64. Okay, he came over from Pittsburgh, great hitter, and not a good athlete altogether. Good baseball, a good basketball player too. But he played for the Cardinals in '64 when we won the World Series, and he died. He was like 90 years old. Oh, and then another Cardinal that we all know and love is Mike Shannon. Mike Shannon played for the Cardinals for 9 years as a player, and then he got some kind of a kidney disease in 1970. He had to quit playing baseball, and he moved into the Cardinal radio booth, and he broadcast the games for literally 50 years.
Wow.
And he died. He died last Saturday. Wow. His deal was that he always had these sayings like Abner Doubleday's done it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, or right down central, or probably his most famous one when a Cardinal hit a home run, he'd say, "Get up, baby, get up,
Yeah.
baby, get up,"
Yeah.
and he had little sayings, and he was, like they called him the Moon Man because he would say stuff that was just unbelievable, you
Wow.
know. And when he was a player, and even worse when he was an announcer.
Yeah.
And Jack Buck was there in the beginning for a long, long time, and Jack Buck was always the best, one of the best sportscasters in the business.
Yeah.
Shannon was okay, but great athlete. He played out of a Catholic school in St. Louis called CBC, and then he went on the University of Missouri. He was a quarterback, and then he
Wow.
played baseball for the Cardinals. But a good ball player, but his announcing was just, you would never think this guy would be announcing ball games. Okay,
Yeah.
but the Cardinal organization, they liked him,
Yeah.
and so they put up with it. And probably a couple of years ago, he just quit broadcasting like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And and probably his most famous saying that there was a sponsor on KMOX radio,
Yeah.
and they did glass blowing.
Yeah.
Okay, and Shannon would get his commercial screwed up.
Oh wow.
Okay, he do the commercial, and he, in between innings, he just talk the commercial, and he starts saying, "Hey, this place is good glass," and he says, "For a good blow job, call this number here."
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, but everybody laughed about that, and he said, "Hey, that's Mike Shannon." Anywhere else they probably would have ran him out of baseball. Okay, but in St. Louis, it's Shannon. That's how it is.
Yeah.
Because just over the weekend, the Oakland A's have an announcer that's been there 100 years, and he used the N word.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
On the broadcast, and they're about ready to run him out of baseball now.
Wow.
I think he's on suspension. And he said it by mistake.
Yeah. Well, you know how it is. We live in a very politically correct world these days.
Yeah.
We fight over,
especially in Oakland,
even in Brownsville.
But in Yeah, even in St. Louis. But Shannon could, Shannon was okay. He liked, he lived for the moment. He played baseball. He did announcing. And then after he did the games, he'd go across the river to Cahokia Downs, and he loved horse racing. He loved horse racing.
Yeah.
He's a gambler, horse racing and stuff. And then he had a chain of restaurants around St. Louis.
Yeah.
And then they would do on the home games, especially on a Saturday night. They would do they'd have some of the players there, and he at his restaurants because it was a hangout. Shannon's was right across the street from Busch Stadium, across the street.
Wow.
So a lot of the ball players and other people in baseball, and he'd have an interview. They'd be having a meal and they'd be drinking and stuff like that.
Yeah. Wow.
But he was an institution in St. Louis. Mike Shannon. He's 83 years old. So we've lost that 64 team. I think the only ball players are left is Bob Uecker, of all things.
Wow.
Mr. Baseball.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even know he was still alive.
He's announcing the Milwaukee Brewer games.
Wow.
He doesn't do the away games anymore, but he does do the radio for all home games.
I wonder how old he is now.
I think he's like 87.
Oh, that's young. That's young. I thought he was much older.
No, he was playing 64 Cardinals with.
Yeah.
He was, with Shannon and Gibson and McCarver, all those guys, Boyer. And, he was always, the famous tuba incident where the Cardinals were in the World Series and the marching band was out on the field. And he threw a ball. He had a good arm. He threw a ball and the ball went inside the tuba player.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And, the Cardinals had to buy the marching band a new tuba.
Oh,
and when he got his when Uecker got his World Series check, he was like $350 short. The Cardinals took it out of his check.
They charged him for the tuba. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
A famous story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Baseball.
Yeah.
You go to Milwaukee Stadium now. You heard about the Bob Uecker seats. Okay.
Right.
The very top level of the stadium. Well, they have a dummy up there. They have they have him sitting in a seat.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Bob
Like a
Uecker, yeah,
mannequin, huh?
yeah. He's got his own little seat. He got his own little aisle. He's got
Yeah.
his own little aisle, and Mr. Baseball sitting in that seat. I saw a
Wow.
picture on Facebook, showed him up there this year, sitting
Yeah.
next to himself.
That
Yeah,
is
Bob
cool.
Uecker.
That is cool.
They the Cardinals every time they play Milwaukee, they Cardinals had him on there for a half inning or so, and
Yeah.
and they said, hey, you looking pretty good shape, and he says, yeah, I swim every day.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, he
That
says I
is
swim. I
cool.
don't. Yeah,
Glad to hear
yeah.
that he's still alive after all these years.
Still
Yeah.
kicking.
Still
Mr.
kicking.
Mr. Belvedere. Yeah, TV show called Mr. Belvedere
Yes, I
back in the
remember that. I remember that.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
All
And of
righty.
course, so in Major League, the old, the baseball movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, when Charlie Sheen throws the ball,
Yeah.
the wild thing, and he throws it, hits the upper deck with the baseball because
Yeah.
he's wild, and Euchre says just a little bit of high and outside.
All righty,
Mr.
Doug.
Baseball.
Mr. Baseball. All righty, Doug. Well, that wraps up your first episode for the season. We'll be back probably next Sunday or maybe Saturday with another episode. You're also not off. You're actually back from hibernation. You'll be on Tuesday with us to talk about e-bikes. So everybody, stay tuned to that episode. It's going to be an
Yeah,
exciting.
I love my e-bike.
Yeah, Doug's going to show us his e-bike, some of his videos, and then we had an opportunity to visit Bicycle World here in Brownsville, where we've got some more video of some e-bikes as well. So please tune in to that episode here on Tuesday at 8 p.m. And then, of course, as we mentioned, Doug will be back after that next month to cover all the highlights from Apple's WWDC event, which is scheduled from June 5th through the 9th. So we'll be getting all the highlights from that Apple event. Hopefully, we'll see some new products. So everybody, thank you for watching tonight. Doug, once again, thank you. We'll see you here in a day or two.
All righty, Danny. It's always a pleasure.
Yep, it's always a pleasure, Doug. Okay, everybody, so that's it for now. You guys have a great Sunday of what's left of the weekend. Thank you for watching. All righty, Doug. We are done.
We are done.
We are done.
I wonder what my Cardinals are doing.
Yeah. All righty. Well, I'm going to let you